We're live. Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your co-host, Austin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
This podcast what?
We hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure. Right, Justin?
I forgot I changed it. Thank you
Again.
for joining us today here at the Crit Academy Studios, where everything's made up and your roles don't matter.
That's right. Your role's like Tasha's Cauldron, nothing in it. Useless.
That sucks.
Then it's just a cooking pot, isn't it?
Because this has everything.
Oh yeah, we're really excited. On today's show, we're going to be covering this bad boy. Obviously, we can't possibly cover everything in this book.
Oh, absolutely.
In
not.
one episode. So we've picked some of our favorite parts about it and maybe some things that issues we may have with it that we're going to be discussing today. And of course, on top of that, we have our Unearthed tips and tricks where we bring you new and reusable content for you to bring with you on your next adventure. But before all that, we always have our Let's Talk About Blank segment where we either answer a question or talk about some hot new thing going on in the D&D world. Today we're going to be talking, I want to give a shout out to the new Dungeons & Dragons Adventures Begins. It's a new cooperative board game that just came out. Did you guys get a chance to click this link and check it out?
That looked interesting.
This to me is, I love Dungeons & Dragons, and anything that can help get younger crowd or even newer people into it. Sometimes you got to sneak it in there, so I think this is a really good tool to do that. You can get new
Kinda
people
have to,
on board.
Work it up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is a good way to do that. It's a quick entry into D&D. It allows 2 to 4 players, ages 10 and up. It creates that cooperative experience. Looking at the artwork. I don't own this game at all. I'm not being paid to promote it. It was just something that looked really interesting to me. They got like these little cardboard, maps that you kind of adventure through by drawing cards in the area and creates and generates encounters.
It looks like you use like simplified character sheets too
Yep.
to run your character. So yeah,
They come
Literally just looks like a simplified character
like
sheets.
a tiny one, yeah. And it comes with the different classes and everything. And I think it's really interesting because while it's not a replacement for D&D, it's just another tool to bring people into it. So now instead of it just being the straight complex, because let's be honest, 5th edition is complex, nothing like the old editions, but it can be daunting to get into. So for them, they just released this on the 10th, I think, of November. So it's relatively new. It's got 4.5 stars on Amazon. And I just think it's another great way to introduce people to the game. What are your guys' thoughts?
I agree. I mean, there's a few other games out there too that just look like simplified versions of D&D, and this would, I would say, rank up with them. I mean, honestly, for what, $25? It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
That's
now,
not
if
bad.
you just want to do like a quick simplified dungeon crawl and no one wants to DM, this would be a good way to kick something out in an hour and a half, 2 hours. So
Yeah, which I think
I
is
agree.
just fantastic.
Certainly ideal.
The one thing I did like is that each of the little games, they have a boss at the end, and it's some of the iconic monsters. A green dragon, a kraken, a fire giant, and a beholder. I think that's really cool. They missed out with the mind flayer, though, gonna be honest.
yeah,
It is what it is. Can't win them all.
Anyways, that was just something I wanted to toss in there. I thought it was really cool. If you'd like to follow along when we get to our through our notes, you can head on over to critacademy.com/post/episode 197. Click all that stuff. Should be the top link if you're going there when we're live. Something super quick. I think it's really cool. Kudos to Watsy for trying to milk introduce more people into Dungeons and Dragons and the lore and story. So,
Absolutely.
before we move on to our main topic, as always, if you enjoy our show, consider liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. Head on over to critacademy.com. We got all kinds of freebies you can get from magic item generators to... I got all kinds of shit on there. I can't even remember it all, but some good stuff.
There's so much going on, yeah.
But every single week we give away fat loots, and so if you sign up for our newsletter, you get entered to win one of these 2 prizes that we give away on every single episode. Austin, why don't you tell us about our first giveaway?
Absolutely. So our first giveaway actually is from Loresmith. It's the modular dungeon tiles, specifically, however, the Arcania set. Now, the Arcania digital tile set lets you make dark, shadowy dungeon maps rich with the fumes of arcane secrets. Now, maybe... Thank you, honey. Maybe, in one side, you actually do manage to find the Mind Flare... Excuse me, choking on my own spit. That's kind of on the side over there. And apparently choking on brains. On the other hand, yeah. On the other hand, maybe it's totally fine and normal, and for once, your DM was actually kind enough to not ruin your life.
Who is our winner today of this fine product?
Our winner today is Broad546. Congratulations, Broad.
Woo, congratulations.
Yeah.
If you didn't win, have no fear. You can head on over to critacademy.com/Loresmith and get some free stuff. Make sure to check it out. Chris from Loresmith is really awesome about giving away some amazing content for free. So now, while we're all here, on to our main topic, Tasha's Cauldron of everything. Every D&D Reddit page and Twitter feeds.
100%. It is
groups.
the Xanathar's... What is it? Xanathar's Guide to Everything?
Sequel.
But just part 2.
Right. So exactly what do we have for Tasha's Cauldron here? The wizard Tasha, who was whose great works include the spell Tasha's Hideous Laughter, has gathered bits and bobs of precious lore during her illustrious career as an adventurer. Her enemies wouldn't want these treasured secrets scattered across the multiverse. So in defiance, she has collected and codified these tidbits for the enrichment of all, which is us. That's us.
Yep, that's us.
So there's a
We're
lot
in the multiverse, guys.
So, as I said, there's a lot of content and we can't possibly cover all of it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start off by talking about some of the subclasses. There is, 30 subclasses, I think, in this book, which is a lot. Now, some of them are reprints from other books, so they're consolidated into one location.
Like the Spore Druid, for example.
The Artificer.
Yeah, the Artificer, the Spore Druid, the Blade Singer.
Yep, Bladesinger was another one.
A bunch of those are all compiled in here. So we each kind of looked over and read through all this and decided kind of which ones we wanted to talk about. Ian, would you like to go first and tell us what player subclass or option you would like to talk about first?
Actually, the one I picked was the Ranger.
Give me a page number.
Yeah, 56.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm not going to talk about the archetypes that are in here, although they do have the Fey Wanderer and the Swarm Keeper, which sound kind of awesome if we're being fair.
Yeah, that does sound dope as hell.
The reason why I'm bringing attention to Ranger in particular is, in exception to the Artificer, aside from their new subclass, they give optional class features to the other classes. And in most cases, they kind of say, you can drop this onto your class if you want to. But with the Ranger, although I feel like some of them are more non-optional than others, such as like the fighting styles for the fighter, for example. But the Ranger, instead of like dropping them on, these ones, like all their optional features are basically swap out for a current feature, which I kind of wish they did for everything else too, just for consistency. And then you have to argue, okay, which class gets what optional feature in this game,
right,
or not.
Yes,
but
that's interesting.
Yeah, for like one example is at level 1, you can replace the Natural Explorer feature with the Depth Explorer. You can, or an unsuppressed Explorer Survivor, both in the wilderness and dealing with others on your travels. You gain the Canny benefit below, and you gain an additional benefit below, which you reach at 6th level. 10th for that matter. First level is you gain proficiencies. Choose one of your skill proficiencies, and then you double it.
It's basically expertise.
Right. And can also add 2 more additional languages of your choice. Proving level 6, your walking speed increases by 5 feet, and you gain a climb and swim speed equal to your walking speed, which I found to be pretty
nice. That's awesome.
That's really good.
That is really cool.
And Tireless, as an action, you can give yourself a number of temporary hit points equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier, minimum 1. You can use this action a number of times times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest.
Okay.
And when you finish a short rest, your exhaustion level decreases by 1.
Wow.
Wow, I can think
It's
of a million
actually-
barbarians that would love that.
Yep,
Specifically
actually,
the frenzy ones that can frenzy.
That is actually a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually genuinely like these. It gives that, it separates the ranger into like its own thing, where it's like this tireless warrior that can kind of just like survive in this like any hazardous wilderness essentially, right? And that's actually
Mhm.
really cool because not any class that I can immediately think of can do that. So I'm really kudos. They
on
finally
Facebook?
carved a little hole for ranger to fit in.
Right. And a couple other features too that are optional. Favorite foe, you replace the favorite enemy feature. And this does work as Foe Slayer.
Mhm.
When you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can call upon a mystical bond to mark the creature as your favorite enemy for 1 minute, or until you lose concentration as if it were a spell. And essentially, when you hit that creature again, you add 1d4 damage. So it's basically a built-in hunter's mark.
That I think that's a feature that probably should exist within the mechanics of the ranger anyway.
And now it does.
Right. And is that one of the optional features?
Favorite foe.
Favorite foe. Okay. So now that you mentioned the optional features, and I think this is one of my favorite things within the construct of this particular book, because
Right.
if you don't like some of the features that the classes offer, it makes each class a little more versatile than it was previously. Because there's certain things that your class just automatically gets. So by allowing us to switch those out, you're essentially, and now I might be oversimplifying this, but if each one of those, by giving options, is almost like giving small level feats. Because now you can pick the ones that fit the theme you're trying to follow. Yeah. Which to me is awesome, because I know one of the biggest complaints inside of 5e is that it's oversimplified. And that there's not enough options.
And also, I can go deeper into like the other options that like the ranger gets. Like they do add some more fighting styles, for example. They do that for martial classes, such as blind fighting, thrown weapon fighting, or druidic warrior, which adds druid cantrips to the.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting. Paladin got something very similar where they can get like cleric cantrips. So I was like, interesting. It does give that just that little extra layer of stuff they can work with.
Keep in mind that's a fighting style, so you have to choose it at the expense of.
Right.
But once again, though, the Ranger's kind of the exception, though, with everything, because once again, most of their optional features are you swap out with an existing one.
Mm-hmm.
And not all classes get an equal amount of optional features, and most of them are just drop in. Like the Rogue only has one, for example, where you basically get advantage on a range attack if you don't move. Careful shot.
Mm-hmm.
And the Barbarian 2, Primal Knowledge, which it basically gives you additional skills, or at 7th level, Instinctive Pounce, whereas part of the bonus as you take you into your rage, you can move up to half your speed, which is basically a charge, kind of. So.
Yeah. Austin, what was the subclass you wanted to talk about?
So we're gonna actually head over to fighter. Page. I'm looking at it right now. Hold on. Page 42, 43. First, I also do kind of want to give a brief little mention to the fighting style options, because fighter got like 5, which I think is very cool for seeing that this is all you kind of do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like the idea that they can kind of get away with it with a little more.
Yes, I agree.
I also love the idea that a fighter can now unarmed fight somebody. Don't have to take levels of monk anymore. You can just take a level on fighter and punch somebody with your strength.
And honestly, that's something that I never I mean, I feel like that should have been something that already existed. I don't know if there was a reason, maybe because they were trying to oversimplify it, that wasn't an option. So I do agree. I'm glad that they include the unarmed fighting style, because before you either had to be a monk or take the tavern brawler feat.
Right. And they even actually make it a little bit cooler, which is they incorporate grappling. So at the start of each of your turns, you deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to a creature grappled by you. So you just free grappling damage.
Yeah.
No reason. It's just a very solid, very exciting to me fighting style, but unfortunately Paladin does not get access to it. You cannot hit somebody with your hands. You must use a weapon.
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about the side warrior real quick.
It's a good one.
Yep.
It's something. It's pretty cool. I remember we talked about it a couple times during the it was in its was it Unearthed Arcana
Yep. Well, it was
phase.
a playtest.
They did simplify it, thankfully. You don't have to if you roll like a 1, it gains an extra energy psionic power, or if you roll like a the highest on it goes down. Doesn't do that anymore. It is just based on double your proficiency bonus. That's how many of these dice you have. Nice and simple. I'm very thankful about it because I'm like, as a player, I would never remember that.
It was overly complex mechanic compared to all the other classes. Now, don't get me wrong, I thought it was a dope ass mechanic.
Oh, I
but
agree.
I feel like from a design perspective of the 5th edition design philosophy, it was counterintuitive to what they're trying to do.
Yes, and on top of that, I know as a player, I would not remember it. just as a heads up, I know I wouldn't. Like I would be like, oh god, what is my psionic die at? Like I don't know. You get some cool stuff. So if you take some damage, you can reduce damage taken by the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier as you create kind of like a shield. Not like the shield spell. It's more like you just simply reduce the damage, which is interesting.
Yeah.
You get a psionic strike, so you can kind of just do force damage, I believe, 30 feet away. So get a little bit of a ranged attack along with your...
See, that's the one I really liked because in my mind, I'm seeing him like swinging his sword and sending out like an energy wave or something out of it.
Exactly.
When he does it, which is kind of, I know
or like
that's...
when it clashes into them, there's like an excess of force, that kind of thing. And of course, you get
cool.
telekinetic movement. You get to move stuff with your mind.
Right.
It'd be kind of weird if you couldn't. So you skip along that real quick. You go to 7th level here. You get Psi-empowered leap, so you get a twice. You can gain a flying speed equal to twice your walking speed until the end of your current turn. So you just literally just lift off. It's
awesome.
Basically a dash for a bonus action.
That's pretty dope. So that's kind of like the monk
and you
of
can
the
do
road.
it. You can do it once for free, and then you have to take either a short or long rest, but you can always spend a psionic energy die to do it again. Same with telekinetic thrust. You just impose a saving throw on somebody, and if it fails, it can knock them prone or move it to 10 feet in any direction horizontally.
That's pretty cool.
It seems pretty good to me.
Now, there's a lot of people that were a little disappointed that the psionics was put into subclasses instead of its own class. And honestly, to me, now this is just my opinion, and it's probably unpopular. I actually like that it's in subclasses because having access to the psionics in addition to other class features is really cool to me because nothing says I can't be psionic with telepathic powers and study to become a wizard, or practice to become a sword fighter, or make a pact with a demon to become a warlock. So for me, I almost thought it was a better choice that they made it a subclass as opposed to its own archetype. Though I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up making its own class that's just pure psionics. But
so I think you can
I
make
did like it a lot.
That no matter what people have done. No matter what we've done, people have complained anyway.
Right.
And that is the reality.
Always a lot of people in general, especially old school gamers. So
now the big thing I want to talk about is the character options for customizing your origin. This
Which page is that?
The 7 starts on 7. Honestly, to me, this is one of the coolest things. Basically, it allows you to customize like your lineage, apply your stat points wherever you want. Pick the different size you are. So you, in theory, could be a small tiefling. or a
Large human.
a large human or a large gnome or
Weird.
something. You can totally customize, and this really adds to and I know there was a lot of a lot of flack going up for them changing some of this stuff, but honestly, if I decided I wanted to play a I'll use the tiefling example. Tieflings are very devilish, and they've got this demonic look. But maybe I want to look small like a tiefling, but I don't want to have access to the dark powers that are usually related to that, right? So instead of putting all my points into charisma and getting the extra features that come with like speaking infernal, I can take different traits and different proficiencies to better fit my character that I have in my mind, and I really, really like that.
That actually does bring up an issue that I did want to touch on a little bit, and
What's that?
I actually did this when I first started reading the book to you guys in chat. Like the way wizards and stuff ahead of time, and the way a lot of people interpret it, I actually expected an entire chapter of how to build your own custom races and a lot of features that be laid out then.
Yeah.
So what we got was just basically 2 pages.
Yeah.
And I think we could sum up those 2 pages with, like where the numbers go for your race, put it where you want. Oh, like your starting language, pick one you want. It's like, and sum up this entire pages with pick which one you want.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Oh.
And
You can't be large. My mistake.
Right.
oh, is that not an option?
It's not an option. I see it right
Oh
here.
yeah, small or medium.
Mhm.
Right, and
Still,
the custom
small
lineage is
tiefling.
basically the human variant with a couple extra features. So just from the standpoint of, I was expecting to get this much, but we got this much instead, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I got
Yeah.
it. I know in old handy and chats, like I like how intense people get about a game of fantasy. You can't do that. But the game's all based on your own imagination, so
Right.
rules like
Absolutely.
this makes more sense. Now that leads me into the one other thing I want to touch on this page is they did something that as a DM I would allow anyway, but it's nice to see it in rules, and that's allowing you to change your subclass. Now,
Yeah.
that's obviously something that's meant to be mechanical, right? It's I don't like the subclass I picked. I want to do something different. What's really cool is they give a small example of what could explain this sudden change. So, for instance, sometimes it says sometimes the character undergo a dramatic transformation in their beliefs or abilities. A wizard lies down to nap beneath an oak tree whose roots reach into the Fey Wild. In his dreams, he faces visions of multiple possible futures, and when he awakes, his subclass features have been replaced with those of the School of Divination. That is so cool. It's got so much flavor, and you can build off of that, all because the player decided, I don't want to be an evocation wizard anymore.
And
Because
sometimes the other thing too is a player just picks a subclass, don't have as much fun with it as they thought they were going to.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about this. Because I do truly think that in most cases a DM would just let you do that. But the fact that they said it plain and simple, here you guys go. Here's some rules. Here's an example of how you can make it based on the story. Because some people are stuck on that. Hey, if you got to do this, you got to give me a good story reason. Well, there's some examples in here, and they're not but like 3 sentences. So,
and something else too is actually the just as what I must stipulate is optional. A lot of optional rules in here.
mhm,
A lot of them are rules I think a lot of
There
people
is.
do anyway in
mhm.
their home games. But a lot of people did say though it is nice to see that finally written down saying, "Hey, it's okay if you do this." To at least have a
Right.
written spot you can point to somebody and say, "Yes, I can."
Yeah.
Because it says I can.
Because there are some people that are stuck on that. I do want to give a huge shout out to Ben Deal and Chintora both for following us. Thank you guys very much. So there's go ahead.
And I like this as well because I know that if we ever somehow come to close on the whole in our current campaign, when Matt decides to finally get his vengeance, is he going to still be a vengeance paladin? Because the whole point he took the oath was to finish that part of his life. So what does he do afterwards? He
Right.
originally wanted to be an Oath of Devotion paladin. So would you, as a DM, allow him to go straight into Oath of Devotion? I would.
Hell yeah, I
It makes
would.
sense. It'd be great.
But
It'd
there's
be so
some that
smart.
won't, and that's what I don't. People are so
Yeah.
rigid. It's a game of make believe,
Yes.
people. Anyways,
And I agree. I think we all kind of agree with that, but
Yeah.
that's the point. That's why we're together.
This picture in my head, a player who's playing, let's say, a Circle of the Land Druid. His home forest gets burned down by a horde, for example. And the Druid's now like, oh, you burned down my forest? You will burn. And now they're selling a wildfire druid.
nice. I
See,
love
and
it.
again, that would be awesome. It'd be really cool. And
So-
I don't know.
We're gonna move on here in a second, but I do want to touch
Yeah,
on
yeah.
one more thing from page 5. I made a TikTok about this because I was like so excited. There's actually a short thing on using rules to remember, and my favorite one is number 6 that gives you a nice, concise bonus action spells. If you want to cast a spell that has a casting time of 1 bonus action, remember you can't cast any other spells before or after it and the same turn except for cantrips with a casting of 1 action. Boom. It's no longer split over like 3 different spots in the player's handbook. It's simple. It's 1 paragraph to the point.
It's right there.
I mean,
You can't miss it now.
they got a bunch of other ones too, but I like that one.
I remember
I like that one.
people complain about some of these like 10 things you listen in the beginning, saying, "Oh, they put this in here," and everybody was like, "It was always here. You just didn't pay attention."
Well, and
Yeah.
it was split up, so it was hard to find in some cases too.
Well,
Yeah,
like one
it was.
Well, one example is how number 9 is round down if you ever have to cut anything in half.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like one guy going, "Oh, they put us back in the game." Me and everybody else, it never left. Well,
I
they
always
added it
rounded.
back.
Yeah. Oh no, I do always round down. You're right. Never mind.
And guys like, "Oh well, that's all because they added it later in the game." I'm like, no, they didn't. In fact, here's my first printing made back in 2014, where it says right there on page 7, round down. It's amazing what people do sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on really quick. There's a whole plethora of new feats. Some of them are really cool. I have to say that the chef one is pretty awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
And needs its own shout out. Yeah. So they give you some benefits. You can make some snacks for your allies and it helps them, all that good stuff. I also want to say I'm certain Wizards of the Coast is watching our show because several of these feats are very similar to our Weapon Perks product. I'm just saying.
Like Piercer and
Slasher, yeah, those are pretty much like our Weapon Perks product. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
a little suspect, we'll say.
Let you dip into some other class features like fighting initiate, for example, lets you pick a fighting style.
yeah,
That is
awesome.
I didn't even see that one. That is so badass. I love that shit.
And that's the problem. There's just so much good stuff. The big thing I want to talk about next is group patrons. Did you guys get a chance to peruse through this?
I didn't read this. I didn't even know this existed in here.
So it starts with each adventuring group is bound together by a quest and it embarks on by the dangers its members face together. This chapter offers another way to bind the party together with a group patron. These patrons provide a strong binding element, an individual or an organization that unites the party as a team in the service of a greater purpose. So just going off that, what's kind of the first thing that goes to your mind? Because there's something that jumped in my head that just was awesome.
King.
A king, okay.
I can see that. Yeah. I'm not really sure personally.
To me, this screams Avengers, right? Like, you've got Samuel L. Jackson there. Like, all right, guys, there's these people. They're strong. There's some bad stuff going on. We need protection. I'm bringing you together. You don't know each other independently, but I'm bringing you together because I need this goal accomplished. You are literally fantasy Avengers.
I feel like too, like involve like some magical universities, guilds, criminal undergrounds, the organizations.
You know, I guess that's kind of how the Avernus campaign starts, right? We all don't really have to know each other.
Right.
We all just kind of get stuck here and just get thrown together as like a call to action.
And the leader guy there that runs the flaming
The guard
fist.
captain.
Yeah, he is a group patron, right? I need your help to do this. Let's go do it. But
that makes sense.
But what's different about this is it gives you different perks and contacts and those sorts of things. And roles that you can have within, the function of whatever the the big patron is, whether it's an academy like Ian mentioned, or an ancient being giving access to special equipment or research, or a sanctuary or some weird gifts. They really just, it's fleshed out so well, and it comes with some really cool stuff. And then they have a section that's quests where you can just roll on a die and give a general quest, very much like our encounter concepts and our UTTs.
Mm-hmm.
So
It also could be like a military force too, as another example. That could be like a horde, a mercenary company, a standing army within the country, what have you.
I love the criminal syndicate personally. I think that that's really cool. In fact, Tasha actually has a little comment here. It says, "Crime? What's the point? Why steal from somebody when you can simply outwin them or turn them into a toad?"
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Just like the Xanathar's one, my favorite part is some of the little comments that she's making throughout the book, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about these patrons too is the fact that they give you ways to gain other resources, like an armory, for example, if you're in the military force, or other you can ally yourself with. Like, okay, we need a vault cracker, for example, if we're going to do a heist, but no one probably plays a rogue.
Yes, that's really great. That's a great point. I like that.
Just training in general, yeah. I was just thinking that. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot on the different group patrons. They also even give you a guide for being your own patron, which I think is interesting.
That's a lot.
I'm my own boss. But we're gonna. Do you guys have any comments on that? If not, we're gonna move on, because we're just skimming through some of our favorite parts of this. Then in the next chapter, you have the magical miscellany, and there is lots of new spells. Can we just talk a minute about the spirit shroud for a second? Have you guys seen this on page 10? I think it's 108.
I think it's on 10. Yeah, is it 108? It is 108. Yeah.
So in this, so you got the mind sliver cantrip, awesome psychic cantrip. I think it's great, but the spirit shroud really tickles my dice. So it's a 3rd level necromancy spell, concentration 1 minute self, right? You call forth spirits of the dead, which flit around you for the spell's duration, and the spirits intangible and invulnerable until the end of turn. Any attacks you make deal an extra 1d8 damage when you hit a creature within 10 feet of you. This damage is radiant, necrotic, or cold, your choice, blah, blah. Any creature that takes the damage can't regain hit points. There's something very specifically missing from this paragraph. And I don't know if it was already considered and they just forgot it, or if it was overlooked. There's no limit. So now a monk that can flurry of blows gets an extra 1d8 to every attack.
But keep in mind, also keep in mind too, that is a 3rd level necromancy spell, so that means you'll probably have to take at least 5 levels of a spellcaster. So just something worth pointing out.
But I'm even saying, even if the necromancer casts it onto somebody,
you can't itself.
Oh yeah, good. So you'd still have to multi-class. Ooh, okay.
Still have to multi-class.
Sad face. Is there a feat that lets you get access to that?
Probably
not.
I'll tell you what though, as a lore bard, this would be a must-have for me. As a lore bard, I would pick this up and be an appliance. I'd be a buff machine. There are a lot of conjuration spells and summoning magic in this book.
Yeah, I saw summon celestial, summon construct, summon elemental, summon everything. You can summon pretty much everything now.
Yeah.
Spell I like was Tasha's Mind Whip.
What's that?
2nd level enchantment, 1 action, range 90 feet, duration 1 round, thankfully. You psychically lash out at 1 creature you can see within range. The target must make an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 3d6 psychic damage, and it can't take a reaction until the end of its next turn. Moreover, its next turn, it must choose whether it gets a move action or a bonus action. It only gets 1.
Ooh, gonna crack that whip.
And on a success, the target takes half as much damage and doesn't suffer any other effects, but for every level you cast it higher than 2nd, you can affect that much more creatures.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So there's a bunch of new Tasha spells in here, which I think makes sense considering there was only 1 in the original book, right? The hideous laughter. So now we got some other ones. So of course you got the cauldron and stuff. So, and there is also a plethora of magic items. Some of the stuff that we saw them playing around with, like the absorbing tattoo, and that was in one of the Unearthed Arcana, I
Unearthed
think.
Arcanas. Yep.
Yep.
And that's honestly like
Who
I just
knows,
loved the
though?
concept so much that was just still my favorite one. I was just like, yeah, magical tattoos, absolutely. I want them to glow when I'm doing something cool.
They really stick to the theme surprisingly quite a bit with the whole witch's brew and cauldron of rebirth and you know I say that as I can't find another example. But I feel like they Baba Yaga's mortar and pestle. So they really kept to the theme with like the necromancy books
As
and all
much as
that
they
stuff.
could, yeah.
But I feel like they still managed to touch on all the different sort of play styles too, which is pretty cool.
So shoot, they
Flame
practically put
colors codex.
a mech suit in here that's practically invincible.
That's the.
I do recall that.
Is that the mighty servant of Leku? Is that what you're talking about? No. Hang on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's
You could be a gun pilot.
yeah,
Looked at this
it's
and
pretty dumb.
I thought this was a good idea to put in here. who would who would let their players use this? Where's
Yeah,
It's literally
How to put them in
unstoppable.
fight
Like
All right, so there's lots of good stuff. Like I said, we don't have enough time to cover all these
No.
fancy things.
yeah, there's no way.
There's a few more
Stuff
things.
that-
Yeah, there's a few more things I want to touch on. And they're all in the Dungeon Master's Tools section. Because
Yeah.
all of the stuff, I would say the vast majority of this book is probably for players.
Yes,
I mean,
very much so.
easily the first 100 pages are of the 200 are just for player character archetypes and stuff. But there is a good section on Dungeon Masters for Dungeon Masters, and the one I specifically want to talk about. We've talked about it before, real quick. Session 0, they finally have a guide for it for new players. I think
Thank goodness.
kudos to them for that. Obviously, experts and people that have been doing it for a long time already do session 0s, but they give you a bit of a guide. The one thing in here I don't think I had ever seen anybody cover, and I love, because it's called Parlaying with Monsters on 148. Let's be honest, when you're a new DM, when you're going through it, most of the time the assumption is the players are going to end up in what?
on site?
Yeah, kill on sight mode. So
Me.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as a new player playing the game and a new DM, when you don't have any sort of real guidance on what other options are available, it's easy to fall into that. No, you can't do that because the guy won't take the bribe, or he doesn't believe you when you try to deceive him or whatever. But in this section for Parlaying with the Beast, Tasha
1
says,
second. Go ahead and continue.
Oh.
I'll be back.
he says, Tasha says, why fight if a lively chat is possible? If things get out of hand, just show yourself out with Dimension Door. And so what they have here, first of all, they have the meeting a monster doesn't necessarily mean spark a fight. While that's generally what happens, it doesn't always need to go that way. So they give these outlines for different encounters, as well as this should have been in the DMG a while ago. They have this research monster tab that tells you which check is associated with that type of monster. Arcana, aberration, giant is a history check. I wouldn't have thought that. An ooze is an arcana or a survival, and undead is religion or arcana. So they give that good guide, and then right after that they have all these little tables for each of the different creature types. So under beast it says desired offerings, and it's got a D4 chart, and it says fresh meat, a soothing melody, brightly colored beads, cloth, furs, or strings, or an old stuffed animal or other soft trinket. That is a way to get out of combat with a beast, something that can't talk. And that's something that, honestly, a new player doesn't think about, doesn't understand how to do, or in most cases, DMs just shut that stuff down immediately anyway. Oh, it's a beast. You can't parlay with it. Well, this says I can. Why can't I quickly distract the giant killer saber-toothed tiger with a little red mote of light shooting around in a circle to have him chase it, you know? I'm not
Throw a
trying...
pork chop at it.
Or throw a pork chop at it. I actually specifically had a DM. I was playing my wizard, or my sorcerer, another sorcerer that died because they all die on me. And 3 wolves were coming at me. And I was like, well, if they hit me, I'm dead. I'm like level 1. So I was like, all right, I have rations. I'm going to use prestidigitation, and I'm going to make them smell like the most delicious rotisserie meat. And I threw them out. And the DM just chose to have the creatures ignore them. Now, they weren't like highly trained or anything, but even if they were, there should have been something there. This whole section encourages that style of play.
Yeah.
Now that I've said my piece, because this is the thing I was very passionate about, what do you guys think about this section?
I found it to be interesting. I mean, it's one of the things where I feel like if you try to do it, most DMs will try to accommodate you anyway, but once again, it is going to have it spelled out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think this is something that a lot of DMs probably wouldn't think about to begin with. Usually, I agree, they probably would just say kill on sight or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're just used as a plot device for the
Right.
players. But if I had a player who was saying something like this to me, right? They went up to a giant and they were like, here, I stole this from a fire giant back then. Here you go, Mr. Storm Giant. If I was that Storm Giant, I'd be like, oh, hell yeah. You get on in here. You're a brother now. You fucked them guys up. I appreciate it. Like,
Let me get this straight. You attacked fire giants, and you took this item from them after you defeated them? Well, guess what? We also hate fire giants. Come on in.
yeah, like, it's like, absolutely. Get into here.
It's so funny you picked giant. Did you actually read what it says under the giant?
I did, yeah.
One of the options says, a dwarf admitting giant craft to be superior to dwarf craft. Little things like that. Like, I would have never thought of that.
Oh, absolutely not.
I mean, so if a player says, I'd like to negotiate, and if they don't have any idea what they're gonna do, like, I just want to roll to negotiate. As a DM, if you just said that, you rolled really high, I would say, you admit, and you're a dwarf, you admit that dwarf craft is not as good as giant craft. And the player would be like, what? He just starts cracking all that. Oh, finally, somebody gets it.
Or like oozes. I have no idea how to talk to a fucking ooze. This gives me options.
Like what?
I am a gallon of like bones or metal, which the ooze promptly absorbs.
I love it.
If I just take off a piece of my shoulder pad and I just throw it at it, it's gonna run at it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I have to throw it close to it, and I have to not be closer.
Well, they're really slow too, so you just need a small head start. But this is honestly, of the whole book, this was one of my favorite parts. I know it sounds silly, but to have it plain and simple that here are some options, because it gives me more information about the desires of these creatures beyond the traditional dragons like gold, which honestly is on here. But
Yeah.
they have other things, you know, an antique passed down at least 3 generations. Because they're hoarders. They like to collect stuff. So, I don't know. That's one of my favorite parts of the book. The last thing I want to talk about is, once again, Wizards of the Coast is watching us because we released Fantastic Terrain, one of our best sellers, and Fantastic Terrain 2 is scheduled to release next Friday? December 4th. And guess what they have in here? They don't call it Fantastic Terrain, but they have environmental hazards that might as well be Fantastic Terrain because this one gives you blessed radiance. Aberrations, fiends, and undead in the region have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. Or one simple or martial weapon that is non-magical and carried by one character in the region gains the properties of the Mace of Disruptions. So they basically have these environmental effects that apply blessings, boons, and debuffs and debuffs. and it's basically fantastic terrain. So
Yeah.
Buffs, debuffs, and debuffs.
buff and debuff. No,
You said
buff and
you said debuffs and debuffs.
I said debuff and debuff apparently. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So they have a whole section
Pointed.
in here, and these now our fantastic terrain is smaller areas. Though for their topics, they talk about like entire areas. Like this entire area is haunted. So here's all the different effects you can use that when somebody's wandering, fighting, or investigating in those sorts of territories. What did you guys think about this section?
It's interesting.
After going through it, I was like, huh. Yeah, it really is just fantastic terrain.
You're welcome, Watsy. I know you're watching,
Yeah.
Chris.
Going to really look nice. But like, the one that I really liked was the haunted one. I don't know.
I agree.
It's really hard to get like a real, like,
Spooky.
haunted setting inside D&D because you know you're all super powered gods at some point. So.
You know, you say that, but I still have a sorcerer that has soul ripped out of him by opening a door. So.
I said at some point, not immediately.
It's pretty cool too. Did you see some of the benefits it gives?
The one that stood out to me the most was the non-violent but unsettling ghost.
Just kind of follows you around and observes you. You don't know what its intent is. You can't do anything about it, but it doesn't attack. It just follows you around
It's
for
just
days.
like it just says it's perhaps a pet, an accident-prone child, or a dismembered big toe. Appears and follows one random creature for 24 hours before vanishing. The ghost vanishes if it's reduced to 0 hit points. Just follows you.
Huh.
Just like, hey, I'm here. I'm a giant's toe.
Which
you
is
just look
probably
at it
as
like-
big as somebody's head. A toe the side of your head floating around. Or worse, just like hopping around.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's funny.
I like that one.
Well, actually, I guess it's not Malfeather because it's dead, but you get the point.
Yeah. The other one in here that was really cool is the infested environment. Basically biomass of insects readily, outweigh regular organisms, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in the same vein. I like the mimic colony too.
Yes. That
Yeah.
was awesome. The artwork for that one is so cool too.
It is.
The one you can get a baby mimic. It's adorable. I want one.
Oh, there's
The juvenile mimic. This artwork is amazing. I don't know how well you can see it. Let me get this out of the way, but this little single art piece right here is just awesome. That is hands down it's like they're hanging from like hanging plants, and it's got like a 3-foot tongue hanging from it. The teapot has tongue and teeth. The chair has tongue and teeth. Everything's a mimic in the image. It's great.
Yeah, it really is. Even the potted plant's an image. Or a mimic.
Yeah.
Jeez.
They did revisit puzzles in the back too, which I think is really great. And a great addition. In addition to some additional hazards. So, overall, that's pretty much all the stuff I think I wanted to cover. Is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about that I didn't have plated for discussion? I mean, there's a lot in here. Obviously, we can't talk about it all, but
sure. Overall, I do like this book, and there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's a lot of good new options. I kind of wish, though, that there's some content I wish was expanded on a little bit more than they did.
Mm-hmm.
And though a lot of the material is optional, I kind of wish they kind of gave a deeper commitment of saying, making some stuff like not optional. Like, for example, he's like with the fighter, for example, here are some optional fighting styles you can add to the character. I would just prefer to say, here's some more fighting styles. That makes any sense.
Yeah, you would rather it just be here's options or here's new fighting styles, not here are options. Because some DMs will take it option as meaning I don't need it. Or I can't use it. But
and like I said too, I did like, and I do kind of wish a lot of the optional class features were not optional, drop on top of what's already there. I would prefer swap out features like they did for the Ranger. And
I would have liked to
Ranger,
see more of that. Well, I think they did that because everyone bitches and complains about the Ranger, to be in all honesty.
I think the only other non-optional feature that you can swap out was for the cleric, and that was it.
Yeah.
That's only for the
all right. Austin,
but I do like the overall the archetypes for all the various classes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I'm really excited. Obviously, I haven't played them all, but they all were fun to read.
Especially the
Absolutely, I
primal,
agree.
like the primal barbarian.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
Austin,
it's savage.
is there anything you wanted to discuss that we that really jumped out at you before we move on?
No, everything was pretty much covered on my end, so I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. I think that'll do it for our main topic today, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Honestly, I wish we could sit here for 6 hours and talk about it, but fortunately we
We
can't.
all work.
Do you,
We all have
right? We all
jobs.
have work away from this. So do you guys think this is something that is a great addition to a D&D table?
I think yes.
I do feel like you'll have to have a little bit more discussions with your table more than usual if you decide to use the content, some of the content from this book anyway.
Right.
It'd be
Yeah.
weird
A little more
conversation at times.
complex. Yeah. I agree.
Just because of the optional stuff, and even like let's say like I'll even going back and forth with someone that's like, okay, as a DM, what would I think of this? As a player, what would I think of this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and what would I think of? Okay, what if the DM allows this but not allow this?
Yeah.
Is that fair? Is that not fair?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think it's a great addition. Honestly, while I like a lot of the stuff in here, I do think I like Xanathar's a little more. But I think this is an absolute a great addition to any collection. So
I think it's a must-have.
Like short version, if you're a new player and you just want the player materials, player's handbook first, obviously. I would buy Xanathar after that, but this would definitely be a third purchase too. So
yeah, I would agree.
For sure. If you're strictly a player, absolutely.
Yep. If you do decide to buy it and you haven't got it yet, please consider using our affiliate link inside our show notes. We get a small cutback if you do that.
Yep.
It's not much, but it's better than us giving them a bunch of free sales and nothing, I suppose. All right. So that'll do it for our main topic. Before we move on to our Unearthed tips and tricks, we have another gift to give away. Compliments of our boy, Jeff Stevens. Ian?
What?
Ian?
No. That's
Who?
Oh! I moved it again! This is your fault!
he literally doesn't read.
No,
Literally doesn't read his own show notes.
Like, why did you think
We're both
they're doing-
looking at each other
What'd you
like,
say?
It's like
I
that's
do.
not what's next.
Yeah, we have we have the ad, actually. Or the
Yeah.
sponsorship.
So I was like, wait, and I was like,
My bad. Alright.
Yeah.
Austin.
all right. Deep Magic for 5th edition. Kobold minions have traveled the plains, seeking the secrets of magic, unearthing ancient tomes of forgotten civilizations, bargaining with demons and creatures of the void, and scaling the towers of Shadow Fae mages.
Ooh. Now they pass along their hard-won knowledge to you in Deep Magic, an arcane series for 5th edition. Here you'll find new schools of magic, arcane traditions, new and variant spells, magical feats, spell-slinging NPCs, and so much more.
They are compiling, updating, and expanding the prior installments in one PDF with combined spell lists, new spells, subclasses, appendices of dark magic, and variant spells. This PDF has, I kid you not, 356 pages of pure magic. It even has new schools of magic too, such as Clockwork Magic, a Clockwork Domain Cleric, Warlock Pact, Wizard School, 45 new and updated spells.
And they also have Angelic Seals, a celestial arcane tradition, 2 new feats, new spells, and the seals and wards of the heavenly powers.
I love my book. You can also get access to alchemancy with quicksilver and potions, and with an Eastern spin, this collection of infusions, acid rains, and transformation distills the arcane into its own essences. Deep Magic is a big book full of new spells and all that jazz.
Very big.
It puts the Tasha's collection of new spells really to shame. Cobalt Press does fantastic work. If you don't buy it, haven't bought their stuff, please check it out. Can't recommend it enough. And I'm not just saying that because it's a sponsored ad, but this content's actually amazing.
You have good stuff in there.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're one of the number one third party content creators in the world for D&D. So,
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Consider
wouldn't
checking them
doubt
out. Deep magic. Deep magic. All right, moving on to our Unearthed tips and tricks. Ian, would you like to tell us about our character concept?
Certainly. Our character concept comes from our viewer Nathan Hurd, the Chakra Champion. Breathe deep, then exhale, aligning your chakras and removing all anger and darkness in your heart. The spirit and body may be separate. With deep meditation, it can become one. Once done, your understanding of self will allow you to exceed your limits as you never could before. A monk dedicated to aligning their own chakras. Those are their allies, and offsetting those are their enemies. For flavor, think of the ancient one from Doctor Strange, how she
Ooh.
can spirit punch an enemy. And for mechanics, refer to the monk's stunning strike as a spirit punch. Multi-class monk with the bard, and have a buff debuff flavored spells be the monk's ability to exercise their power over the chakras of those around them. Now,
That's
what I
cool.
find hilarious, and I don't think this is very intentional, is how much of the new material from the monk actually goes with
With this theme.
character concept.
Pure coincidence, I promise. Unless Nathan already had that in mind when he developed this and sent it into us, but I don't think so.
Like the Way of Mercy monk, for example, actually fits into this, but what actually might fit in more is the Way of the Astral Self, where you basically fight with your astral projection.
Oh, that is
The only-
cool. I do like
Basically,
that.
if you want to stand from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, here you go.
So stands. I really like this character concept. Even if you don't have those special class archetypes, being able to reflavor your mechanics and stuff easily, the different abilities of the monk can really fit this sort of theme, and it would be cool to see because normally monks are all about kung fu and shit, but having one that's all about peace, bringing peace, and maybe even trying to do it through negotiations. I think this would make a great opportunity for spitting out seeds of wisdom and trying to persuade enemies to stop with their in order to be granted peace in the next world, you must first align your chakras, and you cannot do so with such anger and hate in your heart. You know, something along those lines. You know what I mean?
I feel like even like a cleric could get away with this.
I would agree. I think a cleric or paladin. Maybe their
Paladin would be a little tough.
their smite could easily be a release of you're exploding the enemy's chakra points or
guess,
something.
yeah.
So I don't know. I really like this concept.
I guess they have like like lay on hands. So yeah, I guess it works. You're literally realigning the chakras in their bodies
Hell
to
yeah.
heal them.
So you
I
can
guess.
really do this
Yeah.
with any other class. With several other classes as well. So
Right now, I'm picturing with the smite feature. Here, let me purge your aligned chakras in your body.
let's purge them dark chakra points out, huh? Exploding bursts of energy. Oh, you didn't say it was gonna hurt. You didn't ask.
I'm still to this day am amazed that paladins can't use their smite feature with unarmed strike.
It's coming, I'm sure.
Though I don't know if GMs how
I'm a little surprised as well, but also that means I can't unarmed strike somebody with a smited punch. So
Right.
so no all smite for you.
No, all smite. I see what you did there.
However, if you kind of tinker with the rules a little bit, if you get the demon armor magic item, you get your hands are turned into slashing weapons. But it's a weapon, so that means technically you could punch somebody with a smite.
That's cool.
If
And
you're
that's
Really stretching it.
yeah, it's a little like.
I mean, I've reflavored the maul on my barbarian is his fist, so I mean, if I ever got disarmed, it still counted and stuff like that. But I guess I can see that.
I feel like most DMs, if you ask them, can I use this unarmed strike? They'll go, yeah, all right.
Right.
Go ahead, give him the holy punch in an anti-magic field. See if I care.
I think that'll do it for our character concept, the Chakra Champion. Our monster variant is the Arachnomancer. So
I hate it.
so in order to use this, you're going to start off with the mage stat block in the SRD or in the player's handbook or the monster manual. You know, the drow, it's going to be a drow. I chose drow, but it doesn't have to be, but I chose drow because of, you know, their whole Spider Queen thing. So the Drow are arrogant and perverse and constantly conspire to subjugate others. They are sinister race corrupted by their evil deity, the Spider Queen. Drow who study the arcane arts take their practice of faith and show loyalty and devotion to their deity by mastering spells that would bring their Spider Queen god pleasure. The arachnomancers are casters who devote their energy to conjuring deadly apparitions of spiders of all forms, their poison seeping through every bite to weaken and kill their target. So, for anybody that's our patrons, I got a whole build out of this that's just so much fun with lots of lore and everything that they'll be getting in a couple days. But this was a fun one. So first we have to start with some features you're going to change. You're going to lose the current spell list on the mage stat block and the dagger ability. Instead, you're going to give it a rapier. That rapier will also have the drow poison on the end of it, just like every other drow. And you're going to give it the Fey Ancestry, Spider Climb, Web Walk, and Sunlight Sensitivity, because we're playing a drow here. And the new spells you're going to give it to fit that poisonous, venomous spider feel is we're going to give it Acid Splash, Cantrip, Dancing Lights, and Mage Hand. It, of course, is a drow, so it's going to have Fairy Fire. We're going to give it Mage Armor, Hellish Rebuke. How about that? A wizard with a Warlock ability, and Shield, of course. Once again, touching on the drow aspect, we have Darkness, the Spider Queen, so we're going to have Web and Misty Step. Now this is where the character combination really comes in. You now have Conjure Animals and Counterspell, Greater Invisibility, Conjure Woodland Beings, and Cloud Kill for your 5th level spell. So everything you do will be based on the flavor of summoning spiders that surround your enemies. You hit them up, the Arachnomancer hits them up with a nice good webbing, summons the minions, and then goes invisible. And what's worse, when you're caught in the webbing and the creatures are attacking you, it casts Cloud Kill on top of you and watches as you're devoured as these things scurry around your characters' bodies, climbing on top, biting their teeth into every... Oh, God, thinking about it's giving me the chills. What do you guys think about this?
I think this is
Definitely
a good
worked
build.
the theme, man. I hate it.
You're not a fan of spiders?
Not really. But it does have some defensive options too, so it's not just like an all-out mage. It does have counterspell and shield, which is and mage armor. So obviously it is slightly more formidable than it would initially appear. So I do appreciate that. And it does have some other utility spells like Darkness, Misty Step. It would definitely be a harder enemy to kind of get a hold of, but I'm sure once you're actually in it and just hitting it, then it's probably gonna fall over.
Old Handy says, well, I didn't have a problem with spiders before. You might now. I really like the addition of the Cloud Kill because with the invisibility, because that's key, right? As long as this thing's invisible, once it's summoned everything, it doesn't have to. It can move, it can leave, it can get to a new vantage point.
Do whatever it wants. You pretty much will never be able to find it.
It gets a lot of visibility. It gets a lot of versatility in its actions, and that's just horrible. Can you imagine it summoning a bunch of things and then it disappearing, and then you finally get to the edge, you're huffing, you're breathing, your hit points are low, you're running out of resource, then the bastard appears out of nowhere to finish the job.
Yeah, he stabs you.
Yeah, so what do you think, Ian?
Well, like I said, I think this is an excellent build, and it definitely is in theme with the Drow and the Underdark, so...
That's how I roll. You should see the other flavor that I gave. It's a lot of fun to write. All right, that'll do it for our monster variant today, the Arachnomancer. All our copper tier patrons will get access to the full stat sheet on Tuesday, I think.
Nice.
Might be Wednesday. I forget what day it is. Austin, would you like to tell us about our encounter of the podcast? Sorry,
Absolutely.
This is a little long.
That's okay. The encounter of the podcast is Star Trap. So... light bends strangely in the room due to some sort of dimensional distortion. Motes that resemble starlight bob up and down in 6 pieces throughout the area. A character with a successful DC 16 Intelligence Arcana check identifies the nature of the starlight motes and realizes that if all 6 latch onto the same object or creature, they will explode. When the creature enters or starts turn within 15 feet of the starlight moat or steps upon a triggering stone, the moat streaks across the room at the target. The target must succeed on a DC 15 dexterity saving throw or take 10 or 3d6 radiant damage and latches onto the target. The creature has a movement speed, the creature has its movement speed halved as well. If a creature has at least one moat upon it, the moats move 20 feet toward the target on initiative 15. A creature with a character with a successful DC 20 Arcana check knows that the trap's magic is tied to one location, and while the location is somewhat large, the moats do not pass its boundaries. If a creature attached with moats leaves the area, the moats unlatch at the boundary and return to the room. If a character uses Dispel Magic, each moat is treated as a 5th level spell for the purposes of removing and dispelling. The moats can be targeted for attack, and treating each moat as a Will-O-Wisp without 0 intelligence and all damage is radiant. If all 6 moats attached to one target, which is the fun part of this whole encounter, they release an explosion of radiant light. Each creature within a 20-foot radius sphere centered on the target must make a DC 18 dexterity saving throw. The target then takes a fireball of radiant damage on a failed save and suffer the effects of a slow spell for 10 minutes, or half as much on a successful one. New moats are created in 10 minutes after they detonate on the target and promptly kill them.
Kaboom, yo. What do you guys think?
It's literally a fireball of radiant damage. That sucks for anybody.
My favorite, before I add any details, what do you think about the setup? What would you do if you ran into this sort of encounter?
See, if I was Zorax, and I walked into this room, and the minute it hits me, because I know I'm not dodging it, well, I probably would dodge it, actually, but the minute I know that it hits me, and the minute I know I'm like, oh, it just hit me with some radiant damage, I'll be fine. I'll just walk through. It'll be okay. What would catch me off guard, however, is the 8d6 attached to it. So no matter what, I'm still taking 4d6.
Right.
Well,
and the other thing, or I want to let Ian respond because there's some other things I want to say about this.
Assuming he didn't roll high enough for Arcana for some reason, Merle would definitely be like, ooh, what's this do?
So, what's interesting about this encounter is that it is very easily avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It can be avoided very easy, but let's be honest, players won't.
No.
They will walk right into it with some, and that's what's embarrassing about it. But the cool thing is I can totally see the fear when it. Because everyone expects, it's going to hit me when it gets to me. It's stuck to my arm!
Yeah.
And then you're stuck with 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And then it's going to wonder, well, what happens when I get stuck with all of them? You might have the player who's just like, I wonder.
Yeah.
For science.
I
just look over, hey, you got Revivify? You got any gems? Good? Okay.
Maybe.
We're going to do this for science.
For science. The other thing that's really interesting about this
platform detonates.
The other thing that I really liked about this is you could utilize this to your advantage. If you are able to know that this room is here and you're fighting a big bad, you can totally lure an enemy into it.
Absolutely.
And that to me is another cool way to use a fantastic terrain.
Yeah.
That one was pretty good.
All right.
Fun. Because you're right, I totally wouldn't expect this. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll just walk in. Oh wow, oh god, it stuck to me.
Because on their own, they're not that strong. They're really not. But
yeah, I mean, it was what is it like?
3D6.
3d6.
Depends on your level.
Yeah, it does depend on your level.
All right, that'll do it for our encounter of the podcast. Ian, would you like to tell us about our magic item?
Certainly. Once again, our magic item today comes from Nathan Hurd. Book of the Poppy. I'm pretty sure our Game of Thrones fans are going to know where this comes from right away. If you want to run a campaign that feels grittier and lower magic, like, Game of Thrones, or if you want to throw some mildly defective healing potions at your players to keep them on their toes, use Book of the Poppy for the pain. Book of the Poppy is basically drinkable morphine, which numbs your senses and helps you rest up to get back on your feet. It's also addictive.
Oh, that's bad.
Now, here are a few options that you can use. There's Milk of the Poppy, which is common, regains 2d4 plus 2 hit points, and you suffer from the poison condition until you complete a short rest. The uncommon one, which is 44 plus 4, and you, once again, suffer the poison conditions until you complete a long rest. Then there's Greater Poppy. Regain 8d4 plus 8, and you suffer from the poison condition until you complete a long rest. Additionally, you must make a DC 14 con saving throw or immediately fall unconscious for 8 hours.
Overdose!
Yep.
It's an overdose mechanic.
And when you breach any of these, you must make a wisdom saving throw. And on a failed save, you gain the following flaw. Ooh, Milk of the Poppy will fix all my problems, and I'll do whatever I can do to get more of it.
Oh,
You're addicted.
Yeah, you literally just get addiction.
This
Awesome.
this magic item is turn your player into a drug addict, man.
Hey, I mean, you suddenly have a plot hook. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
Here's that work.
who's passing them out, man? Like maybe it's the old lady on the corner selling healing potions, but she always has a huge successful business because it's addictive.
Yeah.
Hey, man, maybe it's just how it is. I like it. It's a good one. I love the addiction mechanic. That's good, right here. That's solid. I like that.
Very cool. Thank you so much. The only thing I think I would change in this is I would give the saving throw against the poison. Well, no. Yeah, I would give a saving throw against the poison conditions. Andrew in chat says subclass concept, School of Typomancy. You record your spells with terrible penmanship, and as such, they no longer act as they originally intended. For example, colon spray or protection from evil in food.
Steering shite and divine spite.
Sorry, I had to read those. They were cracking me up. I think this is a fun one. I do think you need to know who your table is before you include something like this, because people that may have some sort of negative past with drugs or anything like that may not find this too entertaining. But
yeah,
I do agree this would be a fantastic adventure hook.
I also think this would be interesting to like hand out. Like you want to help your players as a DM to some extent always, and this is a good way to be like, while I don't want to just give them a healing potion, I can most certainly give them this.
And I think this is something you could make more readily available than potions too, and make them even stronger. But the players at first probably won't have a problem with it, but eventually might become addicted to it and are scrounging for more and spending all their gold. This is a terrible idea the more I think about it.
Yeah. The flaw is really what changes it, right? That's the big one.
Fair, it is in line with like the snake oil salesman and stuff they used to use if you will.
Right.
Here in air quotes. So there's a historical angle.
Well, I mean, you can always
sure.
I'm pretty sure you can literally lay on hands, like spend 5 points and cure the condition anyway. So I mean, it's just again at the end of the day, your players even by like 3rd level, this is still just an inconvenience because they're already starting to become heroes. So it doesn't really matter, but it's still there.
Well, can a lay on hands fix a flaw?
Maybe not a flaw.
I feel like this would need if you were to use this, you would need to add the like a lesser restoration or similar magical effects can remove this flaw, because I noticed that's not there, and that's that's part of that. I think that should be there, verbiage like that, because lay on hands wouldn't fix that. So
yeah, you're right.
Lemon
But
flavored
the
fireballs.
idea is
What
there.
the hell is going on in chat? That's funny. I think
nothing.
I think that'll do for our magic item, the Milk of the Poppy. Thank you, Nathan. Our Dungeon Master tip of the podcast is twist the ending. At the end of an adventure, consider using a jarring exit, where the players suddenly learn that the adventure they've just completed is a diversion from the main story of the campaign. perhaps it was just an uninterested sidetrack, or perhaps the villains intentionally misled them in order to get them out of the way for time. You return triumphantly from your latest adventure, only to find that while you were away in the northern peaks of the Spine, the Knights of Ronin deposed the Baroness and took control of Black Rock Keep. Now, it is very important you do not overuse this technique. Players who feel as though they're constantly being duped and dragged along the wrong path are probably going to get frustrated. But having this in occasionally is a nice little, and it's something that a villain would do, right? If a villain finds that you're in the way and they send minion after minion, they can't get rid of you, they might just set up a distraction to draw your attention while they do this other thing. And I really like these sorts of things because it's a really clear and concise consequence of the player's actions.
Yep.
Whether they poorly gathered information or they gathered great information, they just gathered the wrong information. They didn't talk to the right people, leading them to having to deal with their consequences of a decision. And now they have to dethrone this person, which is going to be a lot harder now that they're in charge. What do you guys think?
It's definitely something to always consider in any campaign, honestly. So because I mean, there is of course the more normal route, which is the satisfying ending. So obviously they do want the campaign through close at some point, so they feel satisfied when they do complete it. However, sometimes your players will be like, well, this is coming to a close, and I still want to keep playing my character. Well, can be a way out, I guess, is the kind of the way I look at it.
Right.
So that way they can still play those characters to higher levels that you wouldn't normally otherwise.
Good point.
Oh, I can also see it too, like make the consequences of the character's actions in some cases. Like,
yes,
in a game where I sent the players on a scouting mission, but they took too long to do it because they started dicking around, and we're exploring an area that I made very clear: do not explore this area. It's heavily imply it. And it took so long doing what they were doing when they got back. The fortress that they were scouting for was now on fire. It's like, well,
that's what you get. Oh man, that's funny. Thanks for the sub, Rec 6.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Overall, I think this is a great tip, but once again, it's something you gotta use very sparingly. You'll piss off your players if you're constantly dragging them the wrong direction.
Yeah, because then they feel like the decisions they're making are not impactful, and
Right.
that's definitely something you don't want to do.
Absolutely. Unless you genuinely forget, like I do sometimes.
And that does happen. So I mean, at the end of the day, it is just a tip. It is not the end all be all.
More like guidelines. All right, that'll do it for our Dungeon Master tip. Our player tip of the podcast is don't be a dick. That's pretty good. You can avoid dickitude by playing for time, actional denial.
I cracked up when I read this because you know what I'm going to mention.
While it's fun to blow stuff up or slay a monster with a sword, sometimes engaging in this sort of combat leads to just trading off hit point for hit point, right? While this isn't an issue, trading hits as you work your way through a lair can end up leaving your characters bruised and battered before they actually engage the big bad final boss. So instead, consider putting a little more focus on action denial abilities such as command or web or suggestion or...
Command is a really good one.
Yeah, right?
There's a lot of really good one-word sentences you can throw at some people, like surrender, or leave, or stay, or jump.
Yeah.
Or even then, like Tasha's hideous laughter or Tasha's mind whip.
Some good examples. While ultimately you will defeat the enemy the same way, the goal is to reduce reducing its hit points to 0. Is still the goal. The goal here should be to mitigate the damage that the characters are taking, right? You want to prevent enemies from getting in as many hits as you can. So you do this by... What's that?
Pain.
Yes, I was going to mention that. You do this by tying up the monster's actions so that they can't attack or have to attack at disadvantage. Some really good examples of these are knocking them prone after you've grappled them, so not only can they not attack anybody else, they're forced to attack you with disadvantage. Wasting actions by dropping their weapon. You mentioned the command spell. If you tell them to disarm, they drop their weapon, you can pick up their weapon as a free action. And no action either. You can kick it away as a free action. That may not seem like a big deal, but that's one less attack, even if they go get it the next round, that they didn't have before. And that's huge. Manacles. I love I built an entire thief around using manacles as a bonus action so that enemies couldn't attack. Did I do
Manacles
a lot
are
of...
disgusting.
Yeah, they are. Take DC 20 strength to break. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, there's no way.
Maybe carrying even extra chain or a set of ropes and tying enemies up and tossing them into a rope trick, up into another dimension for a little while.
I mean, even in the Descent into Avernus campaign, Raven used manacles on on the one guy. We all just held him down and didn't even try to kill him. We actually just coerced him to work with us and try and take on Zariel in an indirect way, and that was the goal.
Yeah.
And we succeeded, and we did it, and we didn't throw a single punch pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
So that is a thing. Like you gotta find ways to just I don't want to I gotta kill monster die. That's win, and it's not.
And I've argued millions of times that I think the bard is the best healing class because while it may not heal as much as a life cleric, it'll prevent way more damage. And with Vicious Mockery, with Bane, although I think clerics get Bane too, mostly with just Vicious Mockery in the cutting words. So taking attacks that any sort of restraining ability, a net makes them not be able to do anything. If that's one less attack they make, that's one less bullshit you got to heal or recover from. Ian, I know you want to say something about this.
Finish.
Banishment is very good.
Yes, Banish is something that has happened numerous times in my game. Ian has a fond affinity for Banish.
It's a very good spell.
It is. And that's a great example of one because when you're fighting two guys and one is just gone, he's not attacking anybody until he comes back. By that point, you'll probably have killed his buddy. You ready your actions. He comes back. Boom. Everyone unleashes an attack all at once. That is far more effective than just getting an extra attack in.
Yeah, because it's gone for 10 rounds.
Yeah. To this day, I loved your reaction when I cast Banish on the dragon. And there's a guy riding said dragon.
Yeah, and he fell to his death. We all know. Ass. Really, I went through and I planned out this whole aerial battle thing, and he's just like, can't fly without a dragon. And then the rider just fell to his death.
The dragon didn't have magical resistance?
It was not high enough to have legendary resistance.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, well. That's a problem.
That'll teach me.
Got higher charisma monsters, jackass.
Sometimes it's just down to the roll. I don't even remember what the roll was.
Yeah,
I was so
it
dumbfounded.
Really is,
I was so dumbfounded.
it really is down to the roll.
Word
Of
that
course.
day.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other comments on this?
No.
Nah, I think we covered it pretty
All right.
extensively.
That'll
Yeah.
do it for our player tip of the podcast. Don't be a dick. And you can avoid dickitude by focusing on action denial.
Always good.
Before we close out, we have another gift to give away, don't we?
Yes, we do. Our next giveaway today comes from Just Even Games, Scourge of the Nightingale, Part 1, A Song of Love. A masked menace terrifies the region. The adventurers stumble up into her scheme, the kidnapping of a famous performer known as Devon Artis. Their mission is to deliver a ransom and collect Devon. And today's winner is Gone Dragon Newick, I guess.
I think you got it. Woo! Better than I would have got. Congratulations, Sean. If you enjoyed the product, please leave Just Steven as a review. Let him know what you like about the product. Leaving reviews for us content creators is single-handedly one of the greatest things you can do next to buying the product. Arguably more so, actually.
Yes.
Um,
Arguably more so.
Yep.
If you didn't win, have no fear. Head on over to critacademy.com/Jeff Stevens and get more fat loots. We also have a whole free loot section over there with some really good stuff. And I'm not just saying that because I made all of it. I do think it's actually really good content. If you enjoy the show, please join us on our next episode where we're going to be discussing Homebrew by the Dungeon Coach. I'm super excited about this because it's a collection of cantrips that he has rescaled. So it's not just that they increase in damage or the number of targets they get like new effects. And honestly, they're pretty awesome. They're not even like broken in any way that I've been able to figure out. So I'm really excited to talk about that. If you enjoyed the show and you want to support us, please head on over to critacademy.com. Follow us on social media. Please leave us a review. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, and even if you're not, go subscribe. I would love to be able to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of 2020. I've been pushing for this. This is my goal. So if you're listening to this, even if you don't watch on YouTube, please go do that. Also, as a reminder, as I mentioned, on December 4th, our newest product is coming out, Fantastic Terrain 2. So make sure you pick that up. That is single-handedly one of our biggest sellers was the first one. So
Yeah.
what?
I think that's it.
Oh, yeah. And we just released our Druid, the Circle of the River, where your body parts can flow like the river, shape-changing one arm into a bear claw and creating spikes on your body and combining the best of all the different creatures.
There you go.
That was a fun one. Took a long time, didn't it, Ian?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody want to close us out? I don't know who I gave that line to.
Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, who wants to close it out?
Well, you're the host.
What?
If you enjoy the show and you want to support us, visit us at critacademy.com.
Oh, I did say
Follow
that
us.
already, didn't I?
Yeah. Give us a review.
You sure did, jackass.
I'm a jackass. I gotcha. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Austin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm
Thanks
the
for
wife.
listening.
There's my wife.
I
Hi.
was going to close it out because you weren't doing
Oh,
it.
you want to close it? Go ahead.
Thanks for listening. Keep your blades sharp and spells prepared, heroes.
Yay!
Shit, that was better than me.
I know.
She's going to put me out of a job. All right, we're closing out. Thank you guys so much. Everyone who joined us in chat. Huge shout out to everyone that has followed and subscribed to this episode. You guys are awesome. I realize that noise is actually playing in, so that'll actually be in the podcast now.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I did that on
See-
my end for a reason.
See you guys later.
Yep. See you later, guys.